We're ready.
Okay, thanks very much, Jonny. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to our third UK-Israel Business Northeast virtual business breakfast. If you've enjoyed our previous two virtual breakfasts, you're in for another treat today. We've got a great panel again, covering aspects of sport, business, and of course, Israel. Speaking of sport, we can't start our meeting without wishing Leeds United many congratulations on reaching the Premier League at last. We've got many Leeds United supporters, I'm sure, amongst our attendees, but as you will know, there's definitely a rugby league bias on our panel, and also with your chairman. I was talking before about my first Wembley appearance was watching Leeds and Barrow in 1957, although I was in Paris in 1975 to see Leeds United being robbed of the European Cup. So I hope you've enjoyed your Weetabix and cornflakes, not quite to our usual standards of bagels, smoked salmon, cream cheese and fruit when we have our breakfast meetings at the Mass Centre, which is obviously just another victim of COVID-19. However, we hope to be able to restart maybe after the Jewish holidays. So I'm delighted with the numbers who have joined us this morning. Apart from members and their personally invited guests, we're pleased to know that there are some attendees who I believe are experiencing a UK-Israel event for the first time. So for the benefit of newcomers, UK-Israel Business was founded in 1950 as the Anglo-Israel Chamber of Commerce. UK-Israel Business encourages and supports bilateral trade and investment between the UK and Israel. It was previously known as the British Israel Chamber of Commerce and has a network of over 2,000 companies and 10,000 business leaders, and works closely with the Department for International Trade, the British Embassy in Tel Aviv, the Israeli Embassy in London, and the UK-Israel Tech Hub. UK-Israel Business is a bilateral chamber of commerce. It's non-denominational and non-political. It organises a wide variety of events and delegations in the UK and Israel, including conferences, business breakfasts, roundtable events, and business delegations. Here in the Northeast, it is difficult to find direct connections between local and Israeli companies, but we're determined to change that. And in fact, on our last panel a month ago, we had an Israeli startup who is working with Sheffield Hallam University. So anybody who knows of any Israeli companies or UK companies dealing with Israel, we would be very pleased to know about those. To put the bilateral trade in perspective, over the last decade, Israeli exports to the UK grew by almost 300% against an overall increase in exports of 70%. Last year, the British government said UK-Israel bilateral trade was around £4 billion annually, with particular cross-border businesses in areas such as medical, technology and defence. Economic ties between UK and Israel had been growing year on year. Last year, the two countries signed a trade continuity agreement to remove any potential new trade obstacles, such as tariffs or barriers between the UK and Israel, in the immediate aftermath of Britain's withdrawal from the European Union. And that's going to be much more important as Brexit bites. Israeli firms seeking to establish themselves in Europe have long looked to the UK to do so, with 300 small to medium-sized Israeli firms now based here. Many list on AIM or the main market. Bear in mind, all this is with a population of Israel less than 9 million against 67 million in the UK. And Israel, as many of you know, is probably about the size of Wales. Just before we sort of get onto the main thing, I'd just like to say that in the coronavirus pandemic, the number of cases in the world is approaching 12 million. Roughly half of those have recovered and over 500,000 people have died. As the numbers rise around the world, a newly released book by the paper Jewish News, a reporter there, Jody Cohen, suggests there is room for optimism. Her book, Tikkun Olam, Israel versus COVID-19, reports on more than 40 Israeli innovations that were developed between the onset of the virus and early May. It provides a snapshot of work that has been carried out around the clock in the startup nation, as Israel is called, by scientists, doctors, CEOs, and non-governmental organizations in their efforts to Tikkun Olam, or heal the world. So Israel is playing a major part in the war against COVID. Now, most importantly, before I introduce our esteemed panel and of course our facilitator, I'd just like to thank our main sponsors, Town Centre, Securities, I think Edward Ziff has joined us today, and Big Change, Martin Port is here, and we'd all like to wish Martin happy birthday. Without those main sponsors, we would be struggling. Also, very importantly, are our partners. Fleek Marketing, Jonny Ross, who's our facilitator today. Mitchell Wealth Management, I think Stephen and Charles Mitchell are here. J-Life, Elliot Landy, and J-Life will be having an addition shortly, and it would be great if everybody can support that. Sky Group, Mark Rothwell. Chef Works, Paul Gross. Ideas, Martin Daly. Berries, Simon and Jeff Walton are here, and Simon, I'm delighted to say, is on the panel. And Black's Solicitors, and Nick Dyson also is on the panel. So we've had some outstanding speakers and fantastic opportunities at our breakfast meetings, and we'll be having hopefully another one in September. As always, if you've got any business news or articles, J-Live always willing to receive them and publish them, and UK, the Department of International Trade are very keen to work with us. So now to our esteemed panel. I'm delighted that Simon Johnson has joined us today. He is the chair of the Rugby Football League and a director of SJRB, his own independent consultancy business, which he set up in 2011 after the 2018 World Cup bid contract ended, where he was the chief operating officer of that bid. Just to quote Brian Barwick, Simon's wealth of experience in the sports and media industry, together with his widely acknowledged expertise in sports law and governance, will enable him to make a significant contribution to the ongoing welfare of the sport. High praise indeed. Simon, who's previously held roles with the Football Association, Premier League and ITV, is currently a non-exec director of the Amateur Swimming Association. Operating primarily in the sports, media and leisure industries and in the charitable third sector, he's held both senior executive and non-exec positions. He's also dealt at the highest level with government, parliament, royal family and local governments. As non-exec chair of the Rugby Football League and former CEO of a high-profile charity, the Jewish Leadership Council, he's gained wide experience of leading teams. Simon Walton, it's going to be difficult, we've got two Simons, we'll manage. Simon Walton, who is the managing director of Berries. He joined the business 30 years ago and has been heavily involved in its growth alongside his father, Jeffrey, who is now the company's chairman. And as we know, Jeff is on the board of Leeds Rhinos. Now in its fourth generation, Berries was founded in 1897 with just one shop in Leeds. Today, it dominates the luxury jewellery market in the north of England with its 9 stores. During his time at the helm, Simon has expanded the company's footprint, helped the business embrace the digital age, and overseen the extension and luxurious revamping of the Leeds flagship. And Berries have a long involvement with sport and are sponsors of Leeds Rhinos. Last but not least, Nick Dyson, who has supported Blacks, and Nick has supported UK Israel business for a long time. Nick is a partner at Black Solicitors, and heads up both a commercial property team and a specialist holiday and home parks team. Blacks also have a sports division. Nick joined Blacks in 2002 from one of the Lee's big six firms and is known for bringing a pragmatic and personal touch to working with clients. Since taking his position as a partner at Blacks, the commercial property team has more than quadrupled in size. Nick advises property investors, developers and occupiers, as well as funders on acquiring, developing, selling and letting and charging property. He's built up a strong relationship with some of the key regional property professionals and is a well-known and respected name in the Leeds legal market for practical commercial legal advice. In particular, he has developed a niche in the holiday and home parks market, where he's been able to develop strong relationships with experts and operators in the field, making Blacks a nationally recognised and reputable name and the leading firm in the north. Last but not least, we have our facilitator, Jonny Ross. If any of you know Jonny and have heard him in the role of facilitator in panel discussions, you will appreciate how good and cheerful and lively he is. He's the founder and digital marketing specialist at Fleek Marketing, an award-winning company. Fleek works with a wide range of B2B and B2C businesses and with both public and the third sector businesses. Jonny has over 20 years experience in digital online technologies, specializing in CEO, data, user experience, and digital marketing. We are really grateful to Jonny for not only agreeing to facilitate the panel discussion, but together with my fantastic director, Jane Kleins, organizing this Zoom presentation. So, Jonny, over to you now.
Thanks very much, Colin. Welcome everyone. I'm going to just let Colin step back. There we go. Oh, we've got some. Let me just remove some. There we go. Okay, so morning everyone. Just to remind you, please use the Q&A. Please ask questions, use the Q&A box, chat with pleasure to network. And some of you are still using the not change the drop down to all panelists and attendees on the chat. If you want other people to see it, you need to change it to that. But please ask questions all the way through. Just to remind you, at 10 o'clock there's networking, and there's going to be a link which I've already shared in the chat box. All you need to do at 10 o'clock is click the link and we'll go into the networking session. I'll put that link up again at 10 o'clock. So welcome. Thanks for being here. We've got Simon Johnson. I'm going to have to call you surnames. We were talking about should I call Simon Johnson and we'll call Walton. But no, I think I'm going to go for Simon Walton and Simon Johnson. Nick, we've got Nick here as well. Great to have you all here. You can switch your microphone on, Nick, if you want. I'm going to ask you first, just around, COVID-19, how it's affected you, how it's affected your roles, how it's affected your businesses. I'm guessing, Nick, that people right at the beginning were certainly not buying property, and I'm not even sure if you were furloughed. In fact, let's start with Nick. Did you get furloughed at all, Nick, as a partner?
Well, as tempting as it was to furlough myself, I enjoy the sunshine, which I think was a blessing. I was busy working from home, making lots of phone calls and looking at emails. So I think the property market, like I think last time around Russell mentioned, certainly on the residential, it just stopped overnight. So we've had 2 months where in essence nothing happened, and then there's a bit of a rebound there. But the commercial side of things, everything went on hold. There's still a few transactions, but we're probably about 20 to 30% of what we'd expect. So I think there's that initial shock.
Wow, quite a big hit. 20 to 30%. I think in terms of new instructions, we went down from about, we had maybe 25% of the new instructions coming through. Wow. From what we used to have. But I think that's rebounded significantly. Well, that has rebounded within about two months or so. I think there's a lot of uncertainty around there. And I'd say we're around 60 to 70% now, roughly. So I'm going to go to Sam Walton. So COVID-19, how's it affected you? Did the business close for a short period?
Well, closed obviously all during lockdown. All the retailers closed. Major shock to the system the first few days, that we couldn't actually quite believe that all shops were closed and weren't even quite sure when we would reopen. There was the initial shock, planning how we would actually work through this. Obviously all the government schemes helped, but in the beginning, the first week was just complete kind of chaos and chaos planning. And eventually our internet business grew and grew, and got to and was almost doubling what we were doing on previous years. So that really kept us busy in lockdown. Opened up a few weeks ago, probably 5 weeks ago, when all the retailers were allowed to open. And initially we were busy. I think there was a lot of pent up demand, even for luxury goods. And we've had some good weeks. It's varied around the country, and footfall varies. But we've been pleased how it's come back. And we dropped a little bit last week. I think there was a bit of a reaction to the wearing of the masks rule. And a lot of clients aren't kind of comfortable with that and have avoided the high street. So week on week, we're seeing a gradual build up. So yeah, we're pleased with how it's come back, but certainly unprecedented is the word in the retail climate.
Yeah, sure. Simon Johnson, I mean, it's hit sport heavily, has it not?
It really has. Just by the way, it's a great pleasure for me, a Londoner, to be here. There's a lot of people, friends, business acquaintances, and old colleagues that I know on here. So lovely to be on the same session with you. I mean, for a sport like rugby league, it's really hit us. I mean, like all sports, we were suspended. We were at the start of our season rather than the end of the season, like football was, and that's created a huge number of challenges. One of the first things that we did was try to work as a game in a unified fashion to try and secure some government support. And actually, we were successful at the beginning of May in securing a loan from the government of £16 million. The only sport to receive specific support from the government, which I think is testament to the hard work and unity that we showed as a game. Of course, since then, we've been dominated by how and when it will be safe to return to train and then to return to play, and in what way. And you may know that the Super League will be starting again this Sunday, with games that are being held behind closed doors and at a limited number of venues. Headingley is one of those venues, and that's being used for the matches, at least for the next 2 weekends. And in order to bring the sport back safely, we've had to make some really unprecedented decisions ourselves. We've had to make some rule changes, quite a number of rule changes. Perhaps the most eye-catching one was to suspend scrums for the duration of the COVID pandemic, which will probably be for the whole of this season. We've also ended up suspending promotion and relegation from the Super League in order to make sure that we can keep the sport and the clubs as sustainable as possible. So for a sports governing body, we've taken decisions that are utterly unprecedented and really have required some quite considerable consultation and decision making.
So are scrums still suspended, are you saying? Or
yeah, there'll be, in rugby league there will be no scrums. Remember, our scrums were uncontested anyway, but on medical advice, very strong medical advice from club doctors, with the full agreement of coaches and club owners, we are suspending scrums. And so where there would have been a scrum, the play will be restarted by a play the ball, and that'll be, I should think, for the remainder of this season.
And similar to that, Simon Walton, what's it like serving, do you call them customers, clients? Not sure what you call
customers, clients, as long as they're spending money, I'll call them whatever.
Well, what's it like serving them and wearing masks?
Very strange. I think we have more PPE equipment than the NHS in our stores. We have obviously all the various screens. We've got the visors, we've got gloves. We even have equipment to clean the jewellery after people have touched it. So the whole way of serving people in a luxury environment has entirely changed, and it's a fine balance between welcoming people and making them feel at home and making it a special occasion, but also in ensuring that they're safe.
Simon Oxby's asking a question, which I'm going to come back to shortly. It's a great question, and we're definitely going to be covering it, to do with how rugby league is going to survive moving forwards, and I'm going to come to that topic. But just keeping on the current theme that we're discussing, Nick, with regard to so the rest of the business, you do commercial property, but Blacks cover all sorts of different law. What's the sort of market like right now? Have you still got staff on furlough, or?
Yeah, so I mean things have settled down like in many businesses, and I think professional services are, I count ourselves incredibly lucky that we're not in the kind of scenario that either Simon Johnson or they are from the rugby side or even from the retail side that the barriers are have had to face. We can still trade as professional services. We can operate. It's a bit of a shock to just readjust, but in essence, we're advising people, and you can still advise people most of the time. Even if you can't meet, you can pick up the phone, you can deal with email, and we can carry on. So I think overall there has been an impact, but it's not on. Things have settled down, and clearly where there's change, there's a lot of support needed. In all areas of the business, and the staffing side of things in terms of how the whole furlough arrangements operate. The employment team have been run off their feet, as you can imagine, just trying to help as every time they make a change, advise clients what to do. And also to some extent on the health and safety, because it's a fine balance for all of us to strike, and we all want to do the right thing, but the advice keeps changing, and then from the government, and then you've got to think if you're a responsible employer, what's the right thing to do, and you want to tread the right balance. And if you're a corporate, you've got different resources to if you're a family-run business, and reflecting that, we can help. So I'd say we're around I think things have settled down around 70%, 80%. If we get to that stage by the end of the year, that feels reasonable. And I think what's difficult is whilst the furlough schemes are there and the other financial support, we're in a slightly false economy. And it's nice to have it to some degree, but as that tails off, I think people and the press you'll see will be increasingly looking at how to prepare for after that, and unemployment will be inevitable.
Is now a time to be buying property then? Are prices going down?
In certain areas, you can get some great bargains, I'm sure. I mean, the question is risk and what's going to happen to those. I've heard in the retail market, one architect told me that in America there's some very interesting analysis as to the future of shopping centres, and there was one. There are certain cities which are looking at turning shopping centres, which they don't see as a long-term future, into flat accommodation, because there's lots of parking, they've got lots of infrastructure, and there's a fair bit of money to do it. But for out-of-town shopping centres, that's something which they're looking at, and there's all these things which I think we don't quite know yet where they're going to be, but there will be change and there will be some opportunity.
I've got another question here. It's sport. So in fact, this webinar is around sport. Let's go straight to Simon Johnson on this. So we've got a few questions for you already, Simon. What you've done well with, was it 16 million, did you say?
Yeah.
I mean, you've done extremely well to get that, but I'm guessing that's not a huge amount of money in the grand scheme of things. Correct me if I'm wrong. How far does that take you, and are you going to survive? Is rugby football league going to survive?
So the purpose of the loan given by the government was specifically to enable the Rugby Football League and the game of rugby league to survive, because of course we're hosting the Rugby League World Cup here in England in 2021, and so that was the specific intention. And so we are distributing this money as loans to clubs according to need. We've already approved 6 or 7 loans now, and we're meeting as a loans committee with the government every 3 weeks in order to approve those. So the intention is to enable clubs to meet the cash flow requirements and the loss of income that they're facing. But some of the other decisions we've taken, and this I think allows me to pick up one of the questions that was asked to me about the survival of Championship and League One clubs, so clubs below the Super League. I mean, the government finance is part of that. I think not returning to play until October, when the furlough scheme starts to taper down, will also help. And counterintuitively, a number of clubs have decided that not playing at all this season is the key to their survival. We suspended the Championship and League One competitions because there was not enough interest amongst the clubs to play behind closed doors, and that the season could not be a season of integrity, only starting in October when crowds are allowed in. So what we've done is we're inviting clubs at that level to participate in a new competition for which there will be prize money but no promotion, that will run from the beginning of October to the end of November. Now, a number of clubs have publicly announced they're not going to join it, and we're still waiting to see how many will. But as I say, it's right to the answer to your question, and the question about sustainability, is that counterintuitively, not playing this season may well be the key to all the clubs surviving to start the next season, which is our objective.
And just further, Graham's asked, do the rules, the scrums, for example, does that apply to the international arena as well?
Well, there are no international games at the moment, and there will be no international games, cross-national games, until the end of the season. So we've introduced those rules only for England, only based on the medical advice applying to us. The rules are not the same in Australia because, of course, they have an entirely different biosecurity environment and prevalence of COVID. So I think it's only going to apply to England. It's only going to apply for this season, but we are going to keep this under constant review according to the medical advice that we receive.
And you talking about international, you've got a team in France, in Toronto. Colin Glass, OBE, has asked, how will the resignation of Toronto affect Super League and their players?
Well,
that was quite a big. Just to recap, remind us the story. What's happened with Toronto?
So Toronto last week, Toronto Wolfpack, who are a Super League team, announced that they were not going to participate in the Super League for this season. They were going to withdraw from that. So that's created some challenges for everybody. So Super League will be an 11-team rather than a 12-team competition for this season. And we'll be having discussions with the owners of Toronto and others to work out what the answer is for 2021. But obviously that means that the Toronto players now are being released and they're free to be picked up by other clubs. And we'll have a range of decisions that we have to make. But it's impacted the Super League, it's impacted the Challenge Cup, which Toronto were due to be playing in the last 16 for. So yeah, it's created some decisions for us to make.
Simon Walton, you're a massive Leeds Rhinos fan. You can't wait to get back into that stadium. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, how are you feeling about all of this?
Very excited. I have a son who is counting the hours down until even he can watch it on TV. Never mind actually going back to the stadium. Sport is a massive part of our life, and just to actually watch live sport on TV, the football in the middle of lockdown was at least a sign that there was some positivity coming into our lives. When we will return to live sports, actually watching it, I'm not sure. I'm hoping October. But it's for sports lovers, we really do miss it. So I've enjoyed watching the football, but it's still not the same as watching it actually in the stadium.
And fake crowd noise. Are Rugby going to be using fake crowd noise, Simon Johnson?
But I believe they will. I believe they will. I think they will for the games. They certainly are for the NRL in Australia, and it worked very well. In fact, it was because they did it so well that Sky adopted it for football.
I think it does work well in football, actually. I think having listened to a couple of the games, when there's no crowd noise, it really is difficult to get that atmosphere. Ben Lyons is asking a question to the Simons. Nick, I'm going to come back to you in a moment. Don't worry, I'm not a huge... Nick, are you a big sports fan or not?
Yeah, no, I love sport. I love sport. I grew up having a season ticket at Leeds United. I did go to... I've got more interested in a bit of rugby football more recently, but I just think that the power of sport, which I think we're all alluding to, is just quite phenomenal. And if nothing else, that passion, the fact that it's something which can unite people across... I mean, if you think of the number of people who come out when Liverpool and Leeds both won their cups, it's in spite of all the medical evidence, it's we are social animals, and I think there's an incredible power and need for us to find ways to engage, and sport has that ability to achieve things which I think we can't deny.
Yeah, I think you're right with your examples of Liverpool and Leeds. I think it is, whilst there's concern around COVID and groups of people, you can see how it really does lift spirits, and it's not just the impact it has right now, but it's the impact it has over the next 3 or 5 years as well. So yeah, I can see that. The Simons, once some fans are allowed back, so this is Ben Lyons, once some fans are allowed back in the stadium, what are your thoughts on how you prioritise which fans attend, i.e. is it going to be season tickets holders only? I mean, is this the sort of answer that you can give now? Is this something that's been decided?
So I'll go first, maybe, Simon. It hasn't been decided yet because we don't know what sort of guidance we're going to be given by government as to who's allowed in. At the moment, the indication is it could be only 30% of the attendance of a stadium would be allowed in, and so I think that what it will mean that it will have to be ticketed only. There'll be no walk-ups. I think that most clubs, I mean, we haven't discussed this in detail yet with the clubs, but they will have to prioritise season ticket holders in some way in allowing them to reserve their seats for the matches. But because you're not going to be able to operate with a full stadium, not everybody is going to get in. So they are going to need a system that is fair. And I don't think they've worked it out yet, mainly because we just haven't received the final guidance from the government.
Stephen Mitchell is asking: is there animosity towards Toronto Wolfpack? Will they be welcome next year?
Well, I wouldn't say that they were flavour of the month for pulling out of the league after 8 matches, but whether they come back next year, I think will depend on a range of factors. So I think we're not ready to commit to that next year. Certainly, we would like. I think. My personal view is I think Super League has been enhanced by having Toronto in it. You know, they had some interesting players with them, Sonny Bill Williams and others. And I think they helped to create some visibility for Super League that they benefited from. But let's see what happens. I think there's a lot more discussions to be had over the coming weeks before we know whether they'll come back next year.
David Israel, this is for Simon Walton, has a fabulous question. Berries have been a long sponsor of Leeds Rhinos, but how much of it is business and how much actually is fandom? What benefits does the business see as a result of these partnerships, or is this actually just to keep you happy?
It's a good question. I think a lot of it is obviously my father's involvement with the Rhinos, and it's not our obviously typical client base. However, we have become well known in rugby league world as the kind of the official jeweler, so to speak. It's good visibility and great awareness, and we've recently, I would actually probably say that we're jumping on the bandwagon of the success of Leeds United, and we have done at the beginning of this season. And I have been amazed. We're doing some digital advertising at Leeds United, and I've just been amazed at the awareness of internationally, actually, of the power of Leeds United and how many clients have commented on seeing our name on the boards there. So yes, it's partly a business decision. It's my love of rugby league that we've supported, and the family's rugby league involvement that we've supported the Rhinos. But there is a huge connection between business and sport.
Simon Walton, go.
Sorry, can I just jump in? I mean, the interesting thing, I spotted your board on Leeds United matches, and you mentioned about the international impact, and someone's just asked about this actually. But with Leeds moving into the Premiership, the international coverage of the games is going to be exponentially increased, and it will be really, all the partners I think for Leeds are going to have tremendous visibility internationally now, simply because of the international coverage that there is of the Premier League.
What was your Simon Johnson? What was your involvement in the Premier League? Because you were involved in that, were you not?
Yeah, I was. When I was a private practice lawyer, I did the first ever TV deal between the Premier League and Sky. I was acting for the Premier League, and then
this was when you got. Did you get Des Linen as well?
Oh no, that was later. That was when I was at ITV. No, I'm a bit older than that. I worked for the Premier League for 18 months. As the director of legal and business affairs, and then I was at the FA as director of corporate affairs. I did a lot of work with them, so I've worked very closely with the Premier League. In fact, my job, I was at the Premier League in the season that Leeds United got relegated, and because I was company secretary, my job was to sign the relegation documents, which was a share transfer, which broke my heart as a Leeds United fan.
Um, uh, I'm going to ask Nick Dyson a question for a moment, just off topic for a moment. But one of the things that you're into is walking and the great outdoors and climbing mountains. Have you been able to do any of that over lockdown, or has that been something easy to do, or not?
Well, I didn't go to Peak District and get photographed, just to clarify at the time.
So it wasn't you at the top then, okay?
Not me. Like, I mean, I think lots of people I know have been walking around, certainly when it was the first stages of lockdown, just around the streets, lots of people were getting exercise and talking about all the benefits of that, just having time to talk and reflect and be with family or friends and things, or close friends. And I think I've done a bit of it more recently. Probably more, it's whilst things have started to turn back to normal, we've been able to go back to the office. It's been a bit more limited, but we've been up into the Dales, and I think one of the benefits of being in Leeds is the accessibility to the outdoors, and you can, within a very short period of time, you can go to Otley or Ilkley more, and you know, you're away from everything, and I think it keeps things in perspective when things are difficult, as they have been. There's a level of sport and that element of being together, which we all crave. There's also a level of just having that space and time to think, which I think also is provided.
Well, you were telling me earlier you've been to Iceland and Nepal, I assume, doing some trekking and outdoor. Where's the place for you to go back to?
I went to Annapurna Base Camp, which I met when I was at school. I went to talk by Sir Edmund Hillary and Sherpa Tenzing, talking about how they climbed Everest and the challenges they faced there. And I always wanted to see the Himalayas, and so that was my main motivation. I'd love to go back with my kids and show them. I got to the base camp of Annapurna, which is one of the top 10 highest mountains. I'd love to go back to there at some point, and just, you know, you get away from everything else and keeps into context.
It sounds fascinating. How old are the kids now?
I've got twins who are 11, and I've got a daughter who's 9. And,
right. Okay.
I think I tell you, just going back to on the sport, just try to kind of maintain the sport theme. I think one thing which I've learned from them has been the whole Joe Wicks thing, and they've really got into the whole exercise and realised not just the physical benefits of it, but also the mental benefits. And I do think that that's something which they've helped me personally to try and maintain and do 20 minutes a morning before getting going. I think, again, that level of physical exercise, of doing stuff and sport hopefully inspires people to do, is something which I think we can hopefully hang on to.
I am going to bring it back to sport, but shortly. Simon Walton, it's slightly related. You talked about at Leeds United, you talked about the digital advertising. You also talked about when you were forced to close, online picked up. Has there been a pivotal point for online sales yet? Where, you know, are they going to overtake retail, your bricks and mortar, or
not in our industry? Our industry, it's still, I believe, a bricks and mortar business, but working coincide with a good internet business. It's still relatively small, but it is growing and growing. But it was a great way, obviously, to replace kind of footfall in the high street by shopping online. The question is whether or not it carries on growing or peters out, obviously, if shops are opened. And that's what we're waiting to see. But it is, I still find it remarkable, and the Swiss watch brands find it remarkable, that people are happy spending £5,000, £6,000, £7,000 online. And it's something that's unique, really, to this country in America. It hasn't really got to Europe, and the Swiss are fascinated with the numbers of high-quality watches and expensive watches that are sold online in the UK.
And when you're doing your advertising, is it focused on bringing people, driving footfall into the shops, or is it driving website traffic then?
It's both. It's at the end of the day, yeah, we're kind of a bricks and mortar retailer in high streets around the country, but we're also trying to drive traffic to the internet, and quite often traffic from the internet, they want to touch and feel the item. It then drives traffic to the stores. So it's a joint approach. It's a joint approach, but we don't ever see our internet business replacing our bricks and mortar business.
Simon Johnson, you were integral. I think, correct me if I'm wrong. You were involved in some of the digitalisation with the Rugby Football League. Correct me if I'm wrong. Were you involved in that? And how important is digitalisation in sport? And where's that going?
Well, we've established while I've been on the board an app which is called Our League, which is the attempt to create a membership and a fan community around rugby league. We've also been showing matches from Championship and League One there, which I think has been quite an interesting experiment. We're a small sport. We receive our funding from a broadcasting sale to Sky Sports, so it's been actually quite interesting for us to show live matches outside of the Sky environment, direct to the consumer, and to see what sort of pickup there's been from that. Actually, we've learned quite a great deal from that. We've actually learned when fans watching, not attending the match, but watching online, prefer to watch their rugby league. And we've actually discovered from that early evening on Sunday in a normal world is actually quite a popular time with very little competition on. So that's something that I think will play into our discussions with broadcasters when we come to go back to market. So I think for all sports, it's important to be able to have a digital offering. Whether we are ever at the point at which you can replace the relationship between a sport and a major broadcaster, I'm not sure. I've worked in sports media rights for 20 years, and people have been saying that the money will move to online only, digital only platforms in all that time. It never has. The primary form of income from broadcasting into sports will come from deals with broadcasters such as Sky, BT, BBC, ITV, or whoever. And although digital exploitation of matches is bringing newer revenue streams, they're not enough yet to replace the relationship that there is between them, between sport and mainstream broadcasters.
Yeah, I mean, and it just reminded me as you were talking there, just going back to your ITV days, how you helped them in some way get match of the day. That must have been, you must have been chuffed with some of the stuff that happened during that period.
Two of my most successful, I did lots of deals at ITV that I'm very proud of, but the two were, as you said, Des Lynam. It was part of a whole play. We wanted to end up with Premiership highlights, but we felt we needed to give a bit more visibility and profile to our coverage. I mean, people on here will remember it, but if you talk to kids, they'll have no conception of the idea that our hiring of Des Lynam, a presenter from the BBC, was the lead story on the news and on the front pages of most newspapers on the day that it happened. It was huge as a move. And of course, what that did was it persuaded the people that we had to buy the rights from that we were a credible sports broadcaster, which meant that we came into what was effectively an auction for Premiership rights. We could be successful, and we were. And I think those days, doing that Des Lynam deal and revealing it, and then getting the Premiership were count amongst my top 10 deals in my career. They were great moments.
Phil Fraser's asked a question, and so's Marshall Freeze. Nick, I'm probably going to come to you next. It's around, Leeds is now in the Premiership. What's the effect going to have on business and commercial? Simon, are you going to sell more flashy watches? But Marshall's also asking, what's the impact on the commercial perspective, retail, property, other sports? This will have an effect for a little while. Nick, I'll start with you. Any thoughts on what impact it might have?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two kinds of. It can fall into two kind of categories. I see. I think you've got the direct impact, which we can read in the papers. I read in the weekend about the impact of the getting promoted to Premier League, having you got a minimum of £100 million or thereabouts of income, additional income from that. And then the parachute payments, which are another 100 million over a couple of years if you get relegated. So you're kind of guaranteed a significant boost. You'll have also consequential impact. So all those players, what are they going to do with that money? How many watches and jewellery are they likely to be buying that otherwise would be spending in a different city? How many houses will they look to buy? What will that do to house prices? And then I think you've got the other aspects, which I'm sure Simon's got some experience of, or both Simons, or Sam Johnson from other sports, but I don't know what the metrics will be, but there will be a huge kind of marketing, that perception piece, which we've already referred to a couple of times today, that people just notice Leeds as a city. And I think, like with a lot of marketing and branding, I mean, Simon Walton mentioned about putting various signs at Leeds United and just the initial impact of those things straight away. You've got some. You can't put a price on how how that can work. And I think I think it'll be a huge boost for the city, and I think it's going to certainly help the city weather the storm. I think Leeds has been in a pretty resilient place over the last number of years to have a mix of economies. We're not exposed to just one type of heavy industry. There's a lot of services, there's a lot of flexibility. There has been a move towards IT support, and I think we've been well placed. This will certainly help weather the massive impact that not having income from resale shops and things will be having. And you certainly can see in property generally there's going to be a move away from shops, the need for the kind of shops we've got now, and so having some income from the Premier League has to be a massive boost.
But yeah, I mean, it goes slightly against what Simon's saying about the bricks and mortar, and you see that as not really changing over time. Are you going to sell more Patek Philips? I can't pronounce it, can I? How do you pronounce it?
Job with berries, Patek Philippe. I think it's a huge. I just echo Nick's comments totally. I think it's a huge boost for the city. It's what the city needs just at this moment. We are, when you look compared to Manchester and Liverpool and London, obviously with all those Premiership clubs, we are a one-team city, and I think it's going to be absolutely huge. I think the spending power of the players is just one thing. I just think the pride of the city is back. We always say we have a store in Newcastle, and we think there's a direct correlation between success on the field and success in just general consumer confidence. So no, we're expecting great things, and obviously you think of the money that pours into the city on every match day, from leisure to travel. It could be absolutely huge, and all being well, they'll be successful and stay up there. So
have you now saturated Yorkshire, or do you still think there's room for you to open another retail in Yorkshire?
No, I think we're pretty well covered. We have 4 stores in Leeds. We have 2 stores in York. The stores in York are mainly geared to tourists, mainly overseas tourists, of which we're really missing them at the moment. So I think we're pretty well covered in Yorkshire.
So would it be out of Yorkshire next, or?
Yeah, if we think there'll be opportunities in the high street and in business in the next kind of few months, and we're in a position to move if some opportunities arise.
And just based on the York thing that you just said a second ago, have you seen any return of tourists in York at all?
No. Domestic tourists, yes, but they're not the spenders of luxury goods. The spenders are the Chinese tourists predominantly, and we're missing them terribly. Concerned about the political issues with China at the moment. Worried about will there be a limit on Chinese tourists in the future. But anybody in luxury goods at the moment are missing the overseas tourists, London in particular.
Jeffrey Cohen's saying that he's hoping that you're not waiting for York City to get promoted to the Premiership.
No, or Harrogate Town, yeah.
Simon Johnson, you must know how this must affect us commercially and from a business point of view, because I guess part of your case for getting money to sport is around the impact it can have. So tell us, what impact is it going to have?
Well, the different sports have different impacts. Rugby league has a social impact as well as an economic impact, which is different to football. For Leeds United, I think the biggest change, not mentioned by either Nick or Simon, is the international visibility that you're going to have. Because Premier League football is so widely shown in so many countries, and because fans watch it, then there's just the awareness of Leeds, and then the interest that there will be in Leeds, I think will increase. Remember, Leeds have been there before, so the older people will remember the club. Younger fans will start to get to know them. I think they'll play a good, attractive style of football because of the manager. There'll be quite a focus on them. And I think it will draw attention. And if you look at other teams, you look at other cities where there has been relegation. I mean, Simon mentioned Newcastle, and a bit of evidence that there is a direct correlation between the success of the club and the economic impact on the town. Look at cities like Sunderland or Coventry, where the club, Portsmouth, where the clubs have come out of the Premiership and have dropped right the way down the leagues with little prospect of coming back soon. And look at how your awareness of those cities has gone down with it. So I think that there is just something about the way that the sports industry and the media talk about Premiership, and now they'll talk about Leeds United in the same breath as all the other cities, and that impact internationally will enable there to be greater visibility upon the city. And that, I think, is the opportunity that the city fathers and the tourism organisations and the business organisations and the chambers of commerce have got to build on, so that you can take advantage of what I hope is going to be a lengthy spell for Leeds United in the Premiership.
Graham Clines has asked a question to Simon Johnson. Is there a dialogue between the RFL and the RFU to share ways to operate their respective sports?
No. I mean, there should be, and you would think it would be a good idea, but some of the things that we've done, the innovative things that we've done to make our game safe in COVID, like abandoning scrums, the other rule changes. I know that the chair and chief executive of the Rugby Football Union tried to introduce similar changes for them and couldn't get any agreement to do that. So Rugby Union, bizarrely, is going to come back with scrums, rucks and mauls. And I think they're going to really struggle from a health perspective. So you can see that the way that our sports, our respective sports are run, we have a much better flexibility and the ability to be nimble and to change and to innovate. And I think Rugby Union is quite a slow moving super tanker, and it's quite hard to effect change. So doing something radical as bringing the sports together, I think, is a long way down their agenda, even if we might be interested in it.
Simon Walton, is that how you see it as well?
Yeah, I think the two sports have grown closer over the years, but there's still a big divide. And I must give credit to the organisations of Rugby League. They are very forward thinking in terms of rule changes, and we do really lead the way. It's just a shame that the sport isn't more recognised as much as Rugby Union.
Just to change the subject for a moment, Nick, I just wanted to, going back to commercial property for a moment, there was, the big story with JD rebuying Go Outdoors, doing some kind of deal to really annoy the property market. Is this a one-off, or is this happening all over the place?
I suppose what we're seeing is there's a mixture of responses. There has been comments also, I think, from Primark. You'll see in the press where they said they're not going to take the additional furlough monies. And so you have a split. I think it's referred to on the last webinar which you ran, where on Beaver Books we were talking a bit about how the different landlords have approached things, and I think there is this there's a expectation that people act responsibly, and like in many environments, some people will take advantage of the rules, and I think there's a number of occupiers there'll be certain landlords as well who might take advantage of situations and try and make the most out of it. I think that there's little you can do. I'm not sure what you can actually do other than reputationally recognise that. I think you hope that people do the right thing, but the rules are there, and we are seeing lots of tenants say to some of our investor landlord clients, we can't afford to pay. And there are some of those clients who tend to be family businesses who are genuine and the landlords tend to work with. And there'll be others who are corporates who are just trying to take advantage and say, we're not paying you, like it or lump it. Even if we can afford to pay you, we're not going to. And we'll take the money from the government and from furlough benefits and grants and things and use it to our advantage, come what may. And whilst that's disappointing, I think it's bearing in mind other practices, it may not be surprising.
Edward Ziff has just commented saying TCS are in the county courts versus Boots. I'm not sure if he was looking for an opinion there or to let you know, but yeah.
Well, I think there's going to be more of these things. We're going to come out of furlough, and there's pent-up demand in terms of litigation. How many tenants will genuinely be able to pay but haven't? And like I said before, we're in a service industry which is we can operate, maybe some major changes, but we can carry on functioning. We're in a very different scenario to a retailer like Berries, where you've been forced to shut your doors completely and completely cut off an income stream overnight. So I think that the legislation can't factor in all those different scenarios, and I think there's a level of trust which the government are relying on, which is very difficult to police. In the same way as wearing masks is very difficult to police it. You're in essence trying to say, well, if those bar and restaurant operators as well, I mean, what else can they do or have they been able to do financially to keep going? So I think that there will be this protection which has that expires in September. I can see a huge wave of litigation coming forward because there will be lots of situations where, and I think the courts are going to struggle. They already are struggling in terms of timing to get round to processing things. So we're preparing for a lot of work September, October time on both trying to help both parties, landlords or tenants, on resolving issues. And I think that commercially what we're expecting is that people will hopefully negotiate the way out and find ways to work constructively. And where that doesn't happen, I think in the short term, both parties have, you remember those things for later down the line, whether the next time there's a lease renewal or how you want to structure your business.
Thank you, Simon Walton. Berries as an organisation. I mean, you've been going a very long time, but you've been through some serious ups and downs. Ups, from a commercial property point of view, you own most of your properties, I believe, so you're in a fortunate position with regard to rents. But retail, I worked in retail. You've had we never had armed robbery though. You've had armed robbery, which just must have been appalling, and I think you were there at the time as well. You've had you lost Rolex at one point, which I think you sort of thought, is this the end of the world? So a global pandemic, I guess, is nothing. Just talk about some of those.
I think whatever business you're in, there's always challenges, and life as a business person is not easy. And the test is how you come back from these things. It's unfortunately the nature of our business. Unfortunately, we are prone to security issues, and we're not the only one. Most luxury jewelers around the country have had some form of robbery. Unfortunately, in my 30 years of retailing, I think I've had 4 or 5. And they are really not nice occasions, and takes a while, obviously, to get over. And I feel very sorry for our staff who obviously have enjoyed these things. But it's a matter of how you bounce back. And the Rolex, losing a brand like Rolex at the time was a major shock, both personally and to the business. But you work hard, you look at different ways of restructuring your business, and we looked at other brands that we sell, and others kind of open the door as one door closed, and the business has actually done very, very well since, and probably done better without it. These brands are particularly difficult to work with. I am a bit of a politician in my daytime, just keeping these brands happy, and they are huge international brands. So it's despite the fact we have wonderful relationships with them, you never really know what their end game is. So it's that's just the business life, unfortunately, and you deal with the cards that you've dealt with, and as my father says, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So we battle away.
The testament has to be how successful you are, and also how the staff turnover is so low. I mean, you've had staff for many years, so it's brilliant to see, because in a lot of organisations that's not the case. So it's great to see that. Simon Johnson, you were the chief exec, was it, of the Jewish Leadership Council? In fact, actually, they still have you as exec on their website. Is that does it need updating?
Yeah, I keep telling them, yes, it does need updating. I left 6 weeks ago, and I've told them 4 times to take me down.
The reason I brought up Elliot Landy from J-Life is asking a really important question. It's probably focused at Simon Walton, but I'll come to Simon afterwards. Simon Johnson, I'm more interested for a moment from a bigger picture. How has COVID affected the Jewish organisations, the Jewish charities? I think you are already on a board of a Jewish charity as well. So Elliot's asking, how's COVID affected charities like LJWB and fundraising with such a focus on the NHS? Simon Johnson.
I know Russell Manning's here, so he can specifically answer about LJWB. But from when we were I was at the JLC as lockdown started. And it was very evident that all charities moved into emergency mode. They were going to lose income. Many had to cancel dinners and other fundraising events, and so the income for charities was very challenged. Now, there are a large number of charities, LJWB is one of them, and Donisthorpe as well, where their cost base probably has gone up. It certainly didn't go down, because you continue to provide services in a scenario where your income is challenged. So one of the things actually I was quite pleased that the JLC was able to do was to step in. Firstly, we brought a number of the charities together so that they could make collective decisions on what to do. They could share best practice, share information, and you wouldn't have charities fighting each other to take an advantage over another one in the fundraising space. So that was a good intervention. We also helped to set up a couple of emergency collective appeals. One was for residential care within the community that raised something like £4 or £5 million, and then another one where we raised something like £2.5 million for frontline social care organisations, and that was to provide emergency income support for organisations that had either suffered loss of income plus increased costs of services. And I think I was quite pleased that we were able to make an intervention there, because that's enabled charities to continue to provide their services. But as we move forward, I think charities have got to look at their cost base. They've got to look at the way that they work. I mean, I'm not sure that the traditional method of fundraising, the charitable dinner, is going to be able to come back at least this year, and possibly for the first half of next year, if at all. And those charities that rely on charity dinners, therefore, are going to have to look at new and different ways to raise income. That means they're going to have to embrace digitalization. They're going to have to embrace community, create greater relationships with their donor base, and they're going to have to look at their cost base. So the JLC now, even after I've gone, will be continuing to work like that, because the impact on charities is going to be significant. I don't think it's because of the issue that was raised in the question, because of fundraising for the NHS. I think what it is that generally there is less money around for those people who donate to our community, which I think is too small a number anyway. And if people's income, individuals' income is compromised, then they're not going to have as much to be able to contribute to charities. So the charitable sector, I think, is in quite a challenging position. It's come through it quite well, but it's certainly not out of the woods yet.
Nick, you sit on some of the art council boards, or sorry, some arts organisations, charities. Are they being affected as well?
Yes, I'm a trustee at East Street Arts, which is a local arts charity supporting artists. Yes, they've used furlough extensively, and they've had to look at very different ways and model of funding. I think they've been slightly luckier compared to the ballet and the theatres, because they aren't performing the same way. So, but certainly the income streams are not there. And I think the point that Simon's just made there about innovation is something which we're all having to do. And I think the whole situation is bringing forward a lot of change, which has been happening. Some of this has been happening anyway in terms of the move to digital across all businesses, and I think the charity sector is no exception from that. And I think it's just making sure people are really reflecting on what their purpose is, and if as charities, those relationships that are key. If there's been over-reliance on a few people, then there's a stimulus to say, actually, this isn't sustainable. You need to make an effort. And I also have often thought that for any charity, it needs to be open to saying, look, if things aren't working, if it's not sustainable longer term, then maybe it's run its course. Things need to innovate. And whilst it's sad that things have to change or you might lose things, I think that it also gives some space and opportunity to think about new ways of doing things. And we have to accept that as part of that cycle of life almost. And I remember seeing the volcano 20 years ago, I think Mount St. Helens, where it destroyed all the forest. And then it went back 10 years later and showed that there's new growth coming through. I think that's been quite a strong metaphor for me for how we confront change.
Simon Walton, I'm looking at the time. I'm thinking, could you give us a 20-second thought on this?
Yeah, I'm head of fundraising for the Welfare Board, and we went into crisis mode very, very early on, realising that our main fundraising dinner was cancelled. We had a crisis appeal. We have a new fundraising committee who were absolutely amazing, found new ways of raising money, and the Jewish community in Leeds really supported us, and they were absolutely brilliant. And I must thank everybody out there publicly for supporting us, because it really, without their help, we would really struggle. As Simon Johnson said, our cost base went up, the demand on the services was bigger than ever, but the community has really helped us, and we have our New Year Appeal campaign coming up, which traditionally we've done in synagogues. We don't think people will be allowed into synagogues this year, so it's going to really be a different way of campaigning, and we're hoping that the community supports us yet again.
I'm just going to do a quick fire question. Colin Glass has asked Simon Johnson, will Leeds United look at recruiting Israeli footballers? Is rugby league played in Israel?
Is rugby league played in Israel? Some people do, and I know there's some people within Leeds trying to set it up. Will Leeds United recruit Israeli footballers? Well, if they can play centre half or centre forward, then they should very much look at it, I think.
I had lots more questions, but we've run out of time. And it's been a really fascinating chat. Thank you so much for being involved. I'm going to bring Colin back in. I'm going to share the networking link as well. So at 10 o'clock, you can literally just click the link and we can carry on networking. I'm just going to bring Colin in. So he should be here now. Just turn your mic on, Colin, and you're ready.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Thanks, Jonny. Yeah, once again, we've had a great panel with some very honest and articulate answers to Jonny's direct questions. So on behalf of all attendees, I'm very grateful for the panel's contribution to another entertaining and interesting discussion. Just before moving into networking, I did omit to say that Murray Harcourt, the accountancy practice where I'm a director, are also partners to UK Israel Business. And we're always looking for more partners and members. And if you're interested in joining, please see Jane Kleins, who will be delighted to explain the benefits. So thanks again to the panel once more, and especially to Jonny and Jane for organising the online mechanics. And now over to the networking. I hope you'll all stay. And I hope to see you again, or at least talk to you again at our next meeting, which hopefully will be in September. Thank you very much.
I thought Colin was going to be talking for a bit longer, so I've actually got a couple of minutes. So I'm going to go back to a topic, if we don't mind. And Colin, you can stay there because we've got a couple of minutes before we start the networking. But big story this week. Wiley, the rapper, made some totally abhorrent comments on Twitter and Instagram. Absolutely awful. Emma Barnett captured it very well on BBC Radio 5 Live, if anyone heard that. Steve, Simon Walton and Nick Dyson, without bringing any humor into this, you may not have even heard of this because I can't find you on social much. But so I don't know how much you've seen. But it's certainly been big. Simon Johnson, you've taken a stand of not being on Twitter, taking a 48-hour walkout. Is that enough? Are we gonna, is this, what are your thoughts on this, and how has it got to this?
Well, I mean, it's not enough. But I actually, the fact that there was a 48-hour walkout and it was so well supported by high-profile people meant that it received a high degree of news coverage. It was in all the serious newspapers, it was on most of the broadcasts, and attention was paid to this issue that would never have been paid before. And the aim of that really is to focus the attention of the owners and the operators of Twitter, Facebook and Instagram to take steps that they are absolutely failing to do to remove hate speech from their platform. What this is about. I mean, it does appear, Wiley himself, who I have to say until this thing I'd never heard of, but his 500,000 followers have been exposed to vitriolic anti-Jewish hatred. So he is a racist, all right? And we can't stop him being a racist. But what we can do, and we can expect, is for publishers, which they are, of these platforms that host these people to protect their users from this type of discrimination. And I think part of the problem, and I think what we find is that although over the last 3 years, awareness of anti-Jewish racism has much been increased, a lot of people have still believed that it's not genuine discrimination, it's not genuine racism. Whereas, racism against Black people or Asian people would be absolutely accepted, it would be abhorrent, and most people will call it out where they find it, as will the platforms. It is not the same about anti-Jewish racism. People just do not believe, they do not accept that Jewish people can define when they are victims of racism, whereas they absolutely accept that black people, members of the Asian community, and other people who suffered discrimination are absolutely able to determine that themselves that they are victims of it. So the aim of this initiative, which, you know, I just played a small part in it, was to draw attention to the publishers of these platforms that they have to do more in order to protect their users. That if they want to earn huge amounts of money from processing us and our data and advertising off the back of us, then they do carry responsibilities to ensure that people who want to spew such discrimination and racism are not able to do so on their platform.
We've run out of time.
Sorry, that was my rant finished.
No, thank you very much. And I'm sure Nick and Simon have seen what's been going on, and I'd love to talk to you both about how you don't believe social is a huge part of Nick, you're on social a bit, aren't you?
Sorry, say that again.
You're on social media a bit, aren't you?
I do a bit, but I mean, part of what you're saying there, Simon, is the reason why I don't do it more. You know, you've got these platforms, and it's an opportunity, it's a tool which can be used for great things, but it's being abused, and there's so much abuse on there. I personally really struggle. I tell my kids, you know, be really careful about exposing yourself to these things, and if you do so, just, you've got to be aware of it, and very easily you can get caught up in some very vitriolic things. And I think there is a sense that typing something out is acceptable in a way that if that was said to somebody else, it would just not be. And I think that that difference is not just limited to the Jewish community. I think there's a wider piece there. And I think that the other piece of which we can do, I think we have an obligation to educate. We have an obligation to also take steps to, what we can do is to make sure we don't just surround ourselves in bubbles and online, but we also meet people, and we don't just put up our own barriers. We do engage with the wider community, and that's part of the reason why I'm involved in other things outside of the Jewish community, because I think we have that obligation to do for people to know other Jewish people.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for attending, everyone. If you now click the link, you will come into a different Zoom meeting. So if you capture that link now, if you can't click the link, there's the meeting ID and the passcode. Click it. There'll be a waiting room. Just wait there for a moment, and then you'll be let in. I'll just give everyone a moment just to capture that or to click the link. Thanks for attending, and we will see you next time if you're not at the networking session, and we'll see you hopefully in the networking now. So if you just click that link, and we'll see you there.